You know that romantic image we all have of the rebel?
Oh, yeah. Like the
Oh.
lone captain on the bow of the ship.
Exactly.
No.
Just standing there, shaking his fist at the hurricane, like absolutely refusing to bow down to anyone or anything.
Right. It's a very classic trope.
It is. And I mean, we're taught from a very young age that this kind of absolute defiance is, the key to mastering our fate.
It's basically our cultural mythology at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But what if the exact opposite is true?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Right. Like, what if the only way to achieve absolute freedom to actually steer that ship we were talking about is through strict, unwavering obedience?
It completely inverts everything we think we know. I mean, we equate mastery with total unrestricted autonomy. Just doing whatever we want, whenever we want.
But the universe doesn't operate on our ego schedule,
Yeah.
which is why we're doing a deep dive today into this really fascinating audio program. It's titled The Law of Obedience, Master of Your Fate.
And it is a dense one.
Oh, it really is. And for you listening, if you love to learn but you kind of hate information overload, our goal today is to unpack this massive paradox. How is obedience the key to freedom?
It's quite the hook.
William Ernest Henley's famous poem, Invictus.
Ah, yes.
Right.
A very powerful piece of writing.
Super visceral. The lines go, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
It sounds like a pure rebel's anthem.
It totally does. It sounds like a rejection of literally all authority.
On the surface, yeah, absolutely. But what the source material argues is that you can only achieve the kind of absolute mastery that Henley writes about by working in, well, strict harmony with universal laws.
So it's not about just breaking rules for the sake of it.
Not at all. You don't become the captain of your soul by breaking the rules of the ocean.
Right.
Like if you ignore buoyancy or fluid dynamics or weather patterns, your ship simply sinks.
Right. You just drown.
Exactly. You become the captain by understanding those forces and actually yielding to them completely.
And their audio program points out something really counterintuitive about history's greatest leaders to illustrate this.
Yeah, this part was really interesting.
Right, because according to the strict man-made rules of the societies they lived in, a lot of these revered figures were notoriously disobedient.
Oh, heavily disobedient.
Yeah.
Many of them went to jail.
Yeah, they absolutely refused to follow the arbitrary laws of the land.
And people look at those historical figures and they mistakenly conclude that the secret to greatness is just, blind rebellion against everything.
Like, just fight the power and you'll be great.
Exactly. But the source material clarifies the actual mechanism at play here. Those leaders were incredibly disobedient to society, sure, but they were fanatically obedient to the laws of nature.
Fanatically obedient. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, because if they hadn't aligned themselves with those deeper truths, their social rebellion would have just been noise. They never would have accomplished a fraction of what they did.
That makes a lot of sense. The speaker references a thinker named Halliwell who describes every single one of us listening as a builder.
Oh, builder.
Yeah, we are all builders, given the raw materials required to construct the exact kind of life we desire. But the outcome depends entirely on whether we build in wisdom or in ignorance.
Which is a pretty stark binary.
It is, and the author says that depends entirely on our understanding of and obedience to what he calls divine law.
Right, and we should probably pause on that phrase.
Yeah, because divine law usually carries a lot of religious baggage.
It does, but here it seems to mean something much more mechanical. It is entirely mechanical in this context.
This is not about a guy in the sky punishing you.
No, not at all. Divine law here isn't about a deity handing down moral edicts. It is about the fundamental operating system of reality, pure cause and effect.
It's like physics.
Exactly. Think of it as the physics of human potential. When you understand the physics, you build in wisdom. When you ignore them, you build in ignorance and your structure just collapses.
And the program calls out a specific trap where our society actually trains us to build in ignorance.
The programming trap.
Right. We are all raised to be, as the source puts it, good little go-getters. We're taught to hold on to whatever we have with a white-knuckle grip.
Hoard your resources.
Exactly. Hoard your money, hoard your time. Just keep everything for yourself.
What's fascinating here is how that societal rule directly violates a natural law, specifically the law of sacrifice.
Because the source dictates that you must give in order to receive, right?
Right, because the law of sacrifice isn't about martyrdom. It's actually a lot of circulation.
Circulation, meaning things have to flow.
Precisely. Mechanically speaking, to fill a cup with fresh water, you must first empty the stale water. If you hold on to everything, you create a blockage.
Like a river that stops flowing just becomes a stagnant swamp.
That's a great way to put it. When society instructs you to hoard, it is literally instructing you to create stagnation in your own life.
I gotta say, though, I'm struggling a bit with the word obedience.
It's a loaded word.
It really is. Just hearing it triggers an immediate rebellious streak in me. And I'm sure it does for you listening, too. It just feels restrictive.
It does. Nobody likes being told to obey.
Right. But if we look at the mechanics you're describing, rebelling against societal norms is sort of like, well, it's like choosing to wear a neon suit to a black tie event.
Okay, I see where you're going.
You might upset the host, but it's just a superficial friction. Rebelling against natural law, though, it's like trying to protest gravity by walking off a cliff.
Oh, wow.
You know, you don't change the law, you don't make a grand philosophical point, you just get hurt.
That analogy perfectly isolates the concept. You aren't being asked to be subservient to a flawed human mechanic who doesn't even understand the vehicle.
Right.
True obedience isn't about bowing to a tyrant. It's about aligning your actions with the manufacturer's specifications.
So if you don't study how the engine works, you can't be obedient to its design.
Exactly, which means you will inevitably pour the wrong fuel into it and suffer a breakdown out of pure ignorance.
So if we aren't supposed to blindly obey society, what exactly does obeying look like in practice?
Well, the program gives us a very clear definition of the word obey.
Right. It simply means to submit to rule or comply with instructions.
Yes. And then it takes it a step further. It calls obedience the governor of all movement, whether that movement is mechanical, literal, or spiritual.
The governor. That's a very specific term.
It is. And that word governor is the linchpin of this entire philosophy.
How so?
Well, in mechanical engineering, a governor is a vital device used to measure and regulate the speed of a machine.
Oh, like on an old steam engine.
Perfect example. A steam engine has a centrifugal governor with those spinning weights. If the engine starts running too fast, the centrifugal force pushes the weights outward.
And that mechanically closes a valve, right, restricting the steam.
Exactly. It slows the engine down, it maintains the system's stability.
And the source uses this exact machine analogy. It says a giant machine operating without a governor will eventually tear itself apart.
Just completely destroy itself.
Yeah, because it failed to obey its own underlying laws of momentum. It generates too much unregulated friction.
And that mechanical reality scales directly to human intellect and spirit.
Okay, this part was super interesting. The intellectual giant analogy.
Right. The audio argues that an intellectual giant, someone with massive cognitive horsepower, who fails to comply with the fundamental laws of learning, will effectively become an idiot.
Let's break down the mechanism of that, because how does a genius become an idiot just by ignoring a law?
By skipping the foundational steps. The laws of learning require observation, repetition, and integration.
So skipping the basics.
Yeah. If an intellectual giant decides they are too smart for the basics, so say they refuse to learn foundational mathematics because they just want to jump straight into quantum physics, their advanced theories will be riddled with fundamental errors.
Because their intellectual engine lacked the governor of disciplined study.
Exactly. Their potential is destroyed by their own unregulated momentum.
The speaker in the audio actually shares a very personal anecdote to drive this home.
The Navy story.
Yeah. He talks about spending years in the Navy and how he absolutely hated being obedient to the orders they dished out.
Which makes sense, given what we've been talking about.
Right. He says the things they told him to do just didn't make a whole lot of sense to a thinking person. And when he disobeyed those arbitrary rules, he was punished on the parade square.
Naturally.
But the striking revelation is that today, he consciously chooses not to obey a lot of what society dictates, but he brings an ardent, patient discipline to obeying universal laws.
Because the Navy represents bureaucratic law. It's often driven by human ego or tradition or just need for control.
Which is why it feels so abrasive to someone who is actually thinking.
Exactly. Universal law, on the other hand, has no ego.
It sounds like the difference between a bad boss micromanaging you, which is the Navy, versus the rules of a video game.
Oh, I like that. A video game.
Yeah. Like, you can hate the bad boss because their rules are flawed and ego-driven. You can argue with them, but you can't argue with a video game.
You really can't.
If you don't obey the underlying programming of the game, your character simply cannot move forward. The game doesn't care if you're angry, it doesn't have an ego to bruise, and it doesn't punish you out of malice.
It just requires specific inputs to generate specific outputs.
Exactly.
The video game code simply operates exactly as designed, and that connects beautifully to the speaker's emphasis on discipline.
Right, because you have to choose to play by the rules.
Yes, this kind of obedience must be consciously chosen and ardently desired. You have to want to learn the cheat codes, so to speak.
It's not forced on you by a drill sergeant.
No, you must choose to apply it to yourself,
Yeah.
because without it, you are just mashing random buttons on the controller, getting absolutely nowhere and tearing your own life apart through unregulated friction.
So, if human bureaucracies are inherently flawed governors, we have to look outside human ego entirely to find a system that actually works.
We have to look at Mother Nature.
Right. The source material moves from these mechanical and military analogies into the purest, most undeniable example of these laws in action.
Nature is the ultimate proof of concept, because she never fails.
Never.
The audio notes that nature has no troubles she cannot overcome, no problems she cannot solve, and no burden she cannot bear.
Because every single one of her operations is governed by the mighty law of harmony and order.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
purely mechanical.
And the program uses this vivid sprout analogy to illustrate this.
Yes, the winter sprout.
Right. So imagine a young sprout in the dead of winter. It decides it wants to grow right now, completely out of season. It attempts to break through the frozen soil.
And what does Mother Nature do?
She immediately destroys that sprout. She reels it off, phases it out, and completely eliminates it.
Yep.
But at the same time, the exact same snow and ice that kills the unruly sprout serves as a warm, protective blanket to all the other seedlings that are actually complying with her law of timing.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Well, I gotta admit, my immediate reaction to reading that was to feel a little bit defensive for the sprout.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels incredibly harsh, like Mother Nature is ruthlessly killing off an ambitious little plant that just wanted to get a head start on spring. It feels almost punitive.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, we have to realize we're projecting human morality onto a biological mechanism.
Fair point.
Universal law isn't emotional. It is entirely about structural integrity.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about the biology of a plant. If a sprout blooms in the dead of winter, it drains the root system's stored energy.
Right, because it's trying to grow.
But because there isn't enough sunlight or warmth to replenish that energy through photosynthesis, the entire organism is threatened.
Oh, I see.
Nature's ruthless enforcement of her timing isn't malice at all. It's systemic preservation.
She phases out the anomaly to protect the rest of the system.
Exactly. She protects the nutrients in the soil for the plants that are operating in harmony with the solar cycle.
That structural perspective really changes everything. It's the exact same mechanism that the source says heals all diseases and removes all discord.
The rules apply equally across the board to maintain the health of the whole.
And when human beings want to utilize nature for their own benefit, like in farming or gardening, they have no choice but to comply with her laws.
You cannot negotiate with soil chemistry.
Definitely not.
You cannot bribe the rain cycle. As the source says, he who acts as nature's obedient servant first later becomes the master who reaps the full harvest.
You serve the law of the soil, and the law yields the crop.
Precisely.
But if nature's laws are that uncompromising in the dirt of a backyard garden, how far out do they reach?
The program scales this concept all the way up to the cosmos.
Yeah, to prove just how precise these laws really are, it quotes the legendary rocket scientist Wernher von Braun.
And he points out that these universal laws are so incredibly precise that humanity can build complex spaceships, send people across the void to the moon, and time the actual landing to the precision of a fraction of a second.
A fraction of a second, over a distance of 250,000 miles.
That level of mathematical predictability is just staggering.
It really is. But the source material doesn't bring this up just so we can marvel at aerospace engineering.
No, it challenges the listener to apply this exact same level of precision to every single aspect of their personal life.
And this is where I struggle to make the leap.
How so?
Well, applying the laws of physics to the health of your physical body makes sense. If I input junk food, I get a predictable biological breakdown.
Right.
But the author says to apply this precision to your finances, your social life, and your family dynamics. How do you apply orbital mechanics to a messy, emotional family argument?
By recognizing that human relationships are governed by relational physics.
Relational physics.
Yeah. Emotions and behaviors are forces, just like gravity or thrust.
Okay.
If you consistently apply the psychological force of harsh criticism into a family dynamic, you will predictably generate the friction of resentment, and defensiveness.
It is an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. It's not random. If you input the force of genuine listening, you generate a different predictable output.
So the laws of action and reaction govern your living room just as strictly as they govern the Apollo missions.
They absolutely do.
That makes the stakes incredibly high for how we interact with the people closest to us.
It does. Which brings us to a major social pitfall the program introduces.
The selfishness trap.
Yes.
Because if you actually commit to living this way, if you start treating your time, your energy, and your relationships with the strict, uncompromising precision of a rocket launch, you are going to stop playing society's game.
You will definitely stop agreeing to arbitrary demands.
And you will almost certainly be accused of being selfish.
Because society relies on you being malleable.
Right.
But the audio brings in a phenomenal definition of selfishness from Oscar Wilde to counter this exact trap.
Oh, I love this part.
Wilde said that selfishness is not living as one wishes to live. Selfishness is asking others to live as one wishes to live.
So what does this all mean? I want to make sure I'm fully wrapping my head around Wilde's definition here. Because if I prioritize my own strict alignment with these universal laws over what my family or my friends need from me, am I not just building a really sophisticated intellectual excuse to do whatever I want and ignore other people?
That is the most common trap people fall into when exploring personal freedom. But let's look at the mechanism of what Wilde is actually saying.
Okay.
The speaker gives the example of parents who demand their child live a very specific way. Say, they demand the kid becomes a lawyer when the child is naturally wired to be an artist.
Right, a classic family conflict.
The parents will accuse the child of being selfish for ruining the family image. But Wilde is pointing out that the parents are the ones demanding the child violate their own natural path, their own structural integrity, simply to make the parents comfortable.
Wow. So Wilde is essentially saying that society's definition of a good person is often just a person who is convenient for them.
That is exactly it.
The real breakthrough here is realizing that when someone calls you selfish for following your natural path, they aren't protecting your morality. They're protecting their own comfort.
That is the absolute core of it. True obedience to universal law isn't about exerting control over other people, which is what the selfish parents are doing.
Right.
It is entirely about liberating yourself. When you obey universal law, you operate in harmony. And an individual operating in true harmony is actually the greatest benefit to everyone around them.
Because you become a functioning, thriving part of the ecosystem.
Exactly. Rather than a rogue machine tearing itself apart and throwing shrapnel at everyone nearby.
And the program is adamant that you don't just stumble into this state of harmony.
No, you definitely don't.
You can't just guess your way there based on intuition. Understanding these laws only comes through one avenue.
Disciplined study.
Right. You have to actively dig in and study the mechanics of reality.
Because without that dedicated study, you're right back to being the intellectual giant acting like an idiot.
You will inevitably pour gasoline into a diesel engine and wonder why your life has stalled out.
Exactly.
Well, let's take a step back and look at the whole map we've unrolled today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started with the fiery defiance of Henley's Invictus, that desire to be the unconquerable captain of your soul.
And we dismantled the romantic idea that mastering your fate means just shaking your fist at the storm.
Right. We explored the massive difference between the arbitrary, ego-driven rules of society, like the mandate to hoard and scramble, versus the actual mechanical physics of natural laws.
Like the law of circulation and sacrifice.
Yes. And we established the absolute necessity of a governor.
We saw that without the consciously chosen discipline to obey the laws of momentum, our lives just generate too much friction.
And then we examined the brutal but essential efficiency of Mother Nature, who phases out the disobedient winter sprout, not out of cruelty, but to preserve the integrity of the whole system.
Which brought it all the way to Wernher von Braun, realizing that the exact same mathematical precision that lands a spaceship governs the action and reaction of our daily family dynamics.
Which allowed us to finally redefine selfishness with Oscar Wilde. Realizing that true freedom requires the courage to live by natural law, even when society demands that you shrink yourself to keep them comfortable.
For you listening, the practical application here is really about auditing your inputs. It means consciously stepping out of the noisy, arbitrary chaos of societal expectations. It requires taking the time to study the underlying physics of your own life.
Because harmony heals.
It does. It rights every wrong and supplies every need, just as the source said. But that harmony absolutely requires the disciplined study of the machine you are operating.
The author actually mentions at the very end of the audio that the next step in this progression is studying something called the law of success.
A great teaser for next time.
It is. But before you can even get there, I want to leave you with this final lingering thought to mull over.
Okay.
We talked a lot about that stubborn winter sprout that gets phased out by nature.
We did.
Ask yourself this. Are the areas in your life right now where you feel the most stuck, the most frustrated, or the most exhausted? Are those actually just places where you are unknowingly acting like that sprout?
That is a tough question.
It is. Are you mistaking your friction for independence and fighting against a natural law you simply haven't taken the time to study yet? True mastery isn't about fighting the ocean. It's about learning the exact mechanics of how to sail its currents.
A mechanical truth that changes everything once you apply it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Until next time, keep studying the mechanics, keep building in wisdom, and stay curious.